Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. My name is Liam. I pick fights on this channel each and every week. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Appreciate you being here. And if you're a returning guest, we appreciate you being part of the sharpest chat in the game. We want to just say off the top, we are joined by one of the sharpest bettors out today on the show to break down UFC Vegas 85. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest for the day. You know him, you love him, back by popular demand. The notorious Rich, just win, baby. How are you, brother?
Yo, bro, how's it going? Sorry, just sorting my audio out. Good to be back, man. A week off, wasn't expecting it, come out of nowhere. But apparently we got card now for the next 12 weeks. Last week was amazing. Don't know if you all remember. I had Magni, so feeling like a genius right now, but ready to break down this card, man.
We'll say cheers to that. Cheers to that Magni call. We hit Jillian Robertson by KO. Jillian Robertson KO too. It was a banner week for the podcast last week. So we're feeling good, and hopefully you guys could just show a little love and support. Drop a like on the video as we get started. Like I said, if you're new here, you might not know, on Bets and Banter, we start at the bottom of the card and work our way on up. So that's exactly what we're going to do with the card today. Without further ado, we got Thomas Petersen taking on Jamal Pogues. This is going to be a heavyweight matchup, and speaking of victory laps, Rich, I got to do a little bit of one. One of my prides in this game, one of my prides and joy is the submission prop. As you know, I grapple myself. I feel like I have an edge sometimes on these submission props. And I called Thomas Petersen's first career submission last time out on the tape. You'd seen him going for it. He's not very good on the ground, but he's aggressive. He's a wrestler. He can get on top of these guys. And frankly, Rich, as you know, the quality of average grappling in the heavyweight division is poo-poo. So if you just have some idea of how to get on top of somebody and you're aggressive, the other guy will run out of gas. He'll panic. He'll give up. So that was a really easy spot. I felt like Chandler Cole seemed like an easy mark, and I called the sub there at a big number. Now, in this fight, though, I think it's a much more competitive fight. I think it's a much more honest fight. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this matchup? How do you feel about the line movement here? Jamal Pogues obviously was a much more significant underdog earlier in the week. A lot of money's come in, pushed that line down. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, well, it makes sense to me, man. Like, haven't we learned about these debutantes coming off the Dana White Contender Series and being priced at like minus 300, minus 400 because they beat some bum on Dana White Contender Series? The most notable one that comes to mind is the guy who lost to Brundage, the big Texan. He was like minus 400. So I'm not getting involved. Yeah, man. The guy shit the bed big time. I like Pogues in this one. I said I'm going to wait, see what he comes in at, because last fight, he weighed the heaviest he ever has, almost missed heavyweight, which is just crazy. But yeah, if you go and look, every fight he's had in the UFC, he's had 3 of them, and each time he comes in like 10 pound heavier. So I want to see what his weight's at. That will tell me how serious he's taking this. If he comes in again at 266, I don't want to know. But if he's at around 245, 250, I might be interested, man. In terms of styles, I think that he's the bigger man, so metrics are on his side. He can negate the one-dimensional wrestling from Petersen. Petersen hasn't got any hands. He's going to look to push the takedowns from the get-go. And I think Pogues can just do what he can do, but better. And he's got the experience. He's had like 3 or 4 UFC fights. He hasn't shown in them, but he's had them. He's had the experience. I like people who've been in the 3 rounds. So Pogues is the side for me. I won't be betting Petersen in this spot, but I want to see what he's like on the scales. And submission was a plus 1,000. Well, it was 1,600 for Pogues when it first opened. But if Petersen gasses in 2 or 3, man, Pogues likes to grapple. He likes to get the sub if you look at his early career. So that's a good look, man.
Yeah, Rich, you a sharp motherfucker. Because I thought I was going to be, breaking news here. I thought I was going to be, having something revelatory. But I feel the same way about this matchup, man. I think it's a dogger pass situation. My favorite looks on this fight, if I had to bet it, are contrarian looks. And you guys know me. That's how I operate. But contrarian looks on this fight, what would they be? I mean, it starts with Jamal Pogues by sub. But I think it continues to just banking on 2 gross, sloppy heavyweights getting into ugly exchanges on the mat. What is the ends by sub going to be in a heavyweight fight? It's probably going to be over 5-1, 6-1, something like that. And so maybe a little bit lower in this case, maybe like 480, 460. Petersen, I think by sub is like 750. So 750, 1050. I think you take the better of those 2 odds, and then you take the ends by sub, and you hope that it's a fat man grappling match. And I think that's very likely what we see. So I won't belabor the point here. I feel much the same way. When you look at Pogues on paper, he doesn't look like all that much, but Jake Collier, what happened when he got on the ground with somebody like Chase Sherman? He just embarrassed him, right? Like, it's one guy who's been at middleweight, a weight class where you have to have skills and an understanding of positions, and then another guy who's just kind of big and, awkward and maybe beat a couple guys from the regional scene. That's what it takes to get to the UFC on Contender Series or whatever at heavyweight. And I think it's just a different level. Pogues has actually fought real guys. Most of his losses are quality opponents. So you look at the fact he gets submitted via heel hook by Alex Polizzi in round 4. I don't think Thomas Petersen's pulling out an Ashi Garami on Saturday night. Go ahead, please.
That is important to note, man. When Pogues has lost, he lost to Polizzi and who was the other one, man? It was on the regionals. It was
Jordan Yeong, the late Jordan Yeong.
Yeah, so it's like grapplers, people who can do what he can do, but better. But Petersen's not on the level of like a Polizzi, so I don't think he's going to be able to manhandle Pogues in there. To be honest, I just think he falls apart, Petersen, after round 1. And yeah, that was a nice cash on Dana White Contender Series. You got it at some stupid 16-1, 20-1. I remember it well, man. But he's fighting Pogues now. Step up in competition. He's not going to ragdoll him like he did that guy, man.
Yeah, the other thing that I had noted about Chandler Cole is that he shoots himself into a lot of bad takedowns. Like, he just gets himself stuck underneath people. That's the recipe for getting submitted in the heavyweight division. You end up underneath somebody big, problems start to occur real quick. And when you look at Pogues, the thing I always like to do, Rich, is just glance at the stat line on a fight, because sometimes it'll show you something that you maybe forgot. And in that fight, I was like, man, this guy went out there and got so many takedowns. I didn't remember it against McParkin. Did he do shit with him? No, but that's against somebody who could really fight, and like somebody who is really training and trains with the world heavyweight champion in it, the weight. So it's like, yeah, I'll go ahead and take that under consideration. Pogues is out there taking his ass down 5 times. I don't think he's going to get completely, owned by Petersen in the wrestling here. So maybe it happens, but I think it's more speculation than what's in the proven record here. But with that being said, man, let's move along to this next fight in the lightweight division. We got Marquel Mederos taking on Landon Quinones, and I just came from the gym, ladies and gentlemen, not the jiu-jitsu gym, just the old, treadmill workout. But on that treadmill, I was grinding some tape because I wanted to make sure I was prepared for the show. And the last thing I was watching was Landon Quinones against Nasrat Haqparast, as well as a couple fights from Marquel Mederos on the regional scene. And when I look at these two guys, Landon Quinones, he looked pretty decent against Nasrat Haqparast. He landed a lot of low kicks. He did some of the things that you want to see from a guy who's coming in, especially as a big underdog, right? He went out there to compete. He didn't go out there and just give away the fight. But I thought the defense, Rich, was sorely lacking. He's just standing in the pocket, taking clean punches, got rocked a couple times. I think if Nasrat had better finishing instincts, might have followed up on that, kind of let him off the hook on a few occasions. And when you look at Marquel Mederos, I would say he's kind of the opposite. He is coming off the Contender Series, right? You could say fits the same kind of criteria. But I do think that Mederos is going to come in here as a pretty dangerous guy. I think he's had enough seasoning regionally to be ready for this step up. And frankly, I thought his last fight was going to be a competition, right? I thought it was going to be a good, honest fight, and he fucked that guy up. So I'm like, okay, maybe I just missed something about this Mederos guy. Maybe he has a little bit more to offer. As for Landon Quinones, I've seen him go out there and go brawling with Nasrat Haqparast, who has basically no ground game, right? Essentially no ability to work on the mat, no submissions in his entire professional career. And, that for me is a little bit concerning, right? Like, that's not a great IQ decision. Yet Jason Knight, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, on The Ultimate Fighter, he goes out there, he takes him down, gets submitted instantly. It's like, is there an IQ problem with this guy? Like, when it doesn't make sense, he goes for takedowns. When it does make sense, he doesn't go for takedowns. That for me is a little bit concerning. So short underdog price. I don't feel compelled to get involved with this, but I did want to do my due diligence so I can have an opinion for the show. And I think Mederos is probably going to get the job done here. Rich, how do you feel?
I actually like Quinones to get it done, man. But it is a very tricky fight, man. And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when James Vick fought Jake Matthews back in the day. Because I've just got a hard time getting a read on it. They were both on the come up. This was before we knew about Vick's chin. And that was back when Matthews was a wrestler. Vick ended up submitting him, I think, guillotine, if I remember right. But anyway, it's a hard one to predict, man. They're both young. They've both got decent styles. I think they can both survive in the UFC and, win a fight in the UFC. So I think it'd be close, man. Some things I like. So I like this Quinones guy. I was thinking about betting him against Nasrat in his debut, but it was too much, man. It was short notice. UFC debut, so I left it alone. But he fared well in that fight, man. And he did what I thought he would. I've got him down as a durable guy. I don't think he's going to get finished in this fight. And that's the reason why I'm betting him, really. When I look on the other side, it was very impressive how, what's his name? Mederos fared in his Dana White Contender Series fight, negated the takedowns and lit him up on the feet. He's the perfect archetype of someone from Factory X, the calf kicks, peppering at range, good takedown defense. So yeah, I just think he's got some early finishes. His strength of competition isn't good. And Quinones, he's been the distance. He's got a good gas tank. He's durable. He's in your face. The only thing I'm concerned about is he's a bit, he's a bit defensive rather than putting the offense on somebody. Like he'd be there to take what Mederos is going to bring to him rather than taking the fight to Mederos. So that worries me. But at dog money on a fight, I think it's 50-50 in a coin flip. I'll be on the dog, man. It could even be a split. So that's where I'm at. And I do think it probably goes the distance for somebody.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. This was a fight that for me felt pretty difficult to call. Can understand why it's closely lined. So yeah, I didn't feel like I had a big edge here. And especially not having a great read on Mederos from Contender Series, I'm comfortable letting this one go. But I do think that some sharp money came in on Quinones, pushed that line down pretty substantially as well. Let me just see what the action has been like as we move off this fight. I mean, he's down to plus 107 on Bet Online,
wow.
opened up at a plus 185 price tag. So yeah, very significant line movement here as expected. And I think that's the result of some sharp money on the Quinones side. So should be a fascinating fight in the lightweight division. That being said, Rich, let's move along to this next one where Julija, Stoliarenko is taking on Luana Carolina. This is in the flyweight division. Stoliarenko went from missing weight every time at bantamweight and looking like a corpse to going out there and looking career best at 125 pounds. So I think there might have been a lifestyle commitment. I think there might have been maybe some, whether that's supplementation, working with a doctor, a nutritionist, a dietitian. It just looks like she's gotten herself in a lot more physical shape and much more prepared. We always talked about it in college wrestling, body composition. That's how you actually cut weight. It's you change your body composition. And I do think she eliminated a lot of body fat. She was skinny fat, and now she's a lot more muscular. So this is an interesting fight to me on paper, Rich. We'll kick it to you first. How do you feel about this matchup? Another closely lined one, this one in the women's division.
Yeah, I agree, man. Julia's looking good. Like you said, career best, but let's be real. It was Molly McCann and it was Rose Clark, and she subbed them both. And that's their Achilles heel, man. They're both shit on the ground. Well, Molly's not completely shit like Rose Clark, but, she was at a deficit against somebody like Stoliarenko, who's just more credentialed than her. In this one, though, in my notes, man, all I put is Luana Carolina is shit. She got subbed by Lipsky. And that's it for me. I could never, ever bet on Luana Carolina. I think she's bottom of the barrel. I like Stoliarenko. I wouldn't say that she has to sub in this fight to win. So those who are saying she's armbar or bust are wrong. She could even win by TKO. I think she's got the better hands. I think she's game to throw down. I can't remember that fight. I think it was on Tough, that bloody one against the Liam-Heslin or something like that, was it?
Yes,
right.
Indeed.
Yeah, so she's willing to throw hands, man. She can be.
She's also broken a girl's nose in Letwe, in the first round.
And I've heard her talk about it as well. So I think this is a good weight class for her. I think Caroline is just in this, man. So so yeah, Julia's the side for me. Decent odds. It was minus 125 when I got it. So I don't know what it is now. I haven't even looked. But yeah, Julia for me, man.
You know what, Rich? I agree with you completely. I think that Julija is going to run through her in this fight. And, my gut instinct at the beginning, I was like, man, Julija, maybe she's going to be overhyped off the Molly incident. But the other first thought that I had was, is the UFC going to waste what was a great marketing opportunity? They just had her go over a big star. Does she have a great record on paper? No, but she's at a new weight class. That's how you put on a fresh coat of paint. So when you talk about Julija Stoliarenko at bantamweight, yeah, she was just not there, right? Physically, she wasn't there. But then you see she's now fighting a girl that was at, now went down to strawweight, right? So from flyweight to strawweight for Molly, right? So Molly kind of realized, Stoliarenko's got the strength of a bantamweight. I don't need this shit in my life. I'm going down. And for Stoliarenko, that was what she had realized. She's like, I'm getting beat up by all these 145 pounders that cut some actual weight. And I'm just showing up skinny fat and getting beat up and trying my best. And if it's not an armbar, I'm going to gas out. I think what people miss the most about like competition, how it really feels, is when you're smaller than somebody, it's no problem. You can compete with them, but you have to use more of your strength per exchange than they do. So like they could just lean on you and you're using a lot of strength. You're using a lot of energy and you tire out faster. So I think that what was happening is Stoliarenko's out there balls to the wall trying to grapple as hard as she possibly can against women that are stronger than her. So she's got to use everything. And when she does and doesn't have anything left, then she's stuck on bottom against a bigger woman who's beating her up. And that's what happened when she got finished by that girl and realized like, yeah, I'm out of this weight class. Like I don't need this shit anymore. The Chelsea Chandler fight. So now I think to myself, like Stoliarenko, I like to listen to people's interviews, man. I know people can call me a fucking square, all good, but I like to listen to interviews. I think people give you a lot about their mindset, what they want to do. Part of the reason I bet on Jillian Robertson last week was I listened to her say, I want to knock this girl out. I want to get on top of her and beat her up. I'm like, I think she could do that. That's what she wants to do. All right, cash me a ticket, please. And it doesn't always work that way. I've had other, fighters say, I want to do this. What about, what's his name? Everybody's talk of the town, the prospect at flyweight, Joshua Van, right? He said, I want to go out there and submit this guy. He tried a couple times and then his coaches were like, please don't fucking do that. And he knocked him out instead, right? That's kind of the way this game goes. It's not a perfect science. But if somebody's telling you, my striking's underrated, people don't take my striking seriously enough. She's broken a girl's nose in the first round. I think she could take this fight to the ground whenever she wants. So if she goes out there and goes for a takedown in the first round and just decides I'm going to punch this girl until they stop the fight, is that not going to take place? Is that an impossibility? I've said, I don't know how many times on this show that if you think somebody can get into a dominant position to submit somebody, they are certainly in a position dominant enough to TKO them. And when we're talking about women's MMA, there's like one Irene Aldana left hook knockout of Ketlin Vieira for every 10 TKO stoppages on the ground where a girl's sitting in the mount going, ah! So I'm just saying, like, take your pick. But I think you could do worse than, 15, 16, whatever it is to 1. On the girl who's favored to win a fight that's favored to end inside the distance. But
and do you know
y'all do whatever you want.
I think the sub's a bit square on Stoliarenko, to be honest. I like the grind and pound, and the reason why is the same way that she got finished by Chelsea Chandler. These girls, Chelsea Chandler, Norma Dumont, Stoliarenko, they got big fucking hips, man. Big thunder thighs. When they get on top of you, they're hard to get off, man. So I could see a similar scenario where she doesn't want to risk going for the arm bar and, falling off and end up on bottom or some shit. So, yeah, the TKO could be on, man. Like you said, she could take it down at will. And then it's a wrap from there, similar to how she got finished, which would be ironic.
I totally agree. Oh my God. my guy, MMA line mover. We'll have a conversation at 3 in the morning and he'll read off every prop on the board. And then he'll be like, I said that one. I'm like, I know, but I told you I'm not there yet. But I agree with him. That's a good spot. And, yeah, this is the thing. I want to just say this as we move to the next fight. Rich hit the nail on the head. Whether or not the sub props hit in this fight, they have gotten nerfed down significantly. So I did hit some similar props, some similar numbers. I think I had Stoliarenko and Jalen Turner on the same card, some combined to win by sub in round 1, like $2 to win like 300 or something. Glorious. But that's the kind of thing where I say to myself, now you're not getting the best of it anymore, right? We got the best of it because people didn't expect it and she was fighting a bum grappler so you could take advantage. Now the sub props, even the sub round 1, I think it's like plus 480 plus, just a lot of the value's been taken out. So with that being said, let's move to the next fight here where Blake Bilder is taking on Jeong Yeong Lee. And this is another fight that seems like a community, like pick of the week. And I don't really have the strongest feelings here, except to say, I was never sold on Blake Bilder. I was very surprised that he won in the fashion that he did on Contender Series. I was expecting him to get smoked there. And he seems like a guy who's got a lot of heart, who wants to be there. But he just doesn't seem to me like he's got all the skills that he needs. He doesn't seem like he has the durability to fight at a super high level. So he's willing to take a shot, but it just seems like he's one of these guys that his body's maybe not willing to take the same damage. So I don't like that about him just coming into this fight. I feel like I don't have the greatest read on his opponent here either. Hard to evaluate sometimes the talent coming off of Road to UFC or some of these shoulder programming from the UFC, because we know what it looks like when somebody's taking on somebody from CFFC, right? We just have a lot of examples. We don't know as much about the talent that's coming out of that part of the world, and you almost want to see some more tests. But I do think that South Korea produces a lot of talent. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here. Korean Zombie, among others, a lot of ranked fighters or, pseudo ranked fighters that pass through the UFC from South Korea as well. So I think there's more of a foundation. Also, younger guy with more professional experience. It's an angle I talk about a lot. He's not the underdog here, so it's not a system criteria, but it is just saying, man, I have to have a little bit more faith in this guy. I think he's a little bit more durable. I think he's got a little bit more speed. So I think Lee is going to get the job done here. But no bets for me, Rich. How do you feel?
Yeah, you just said it, bro. Speed kills, and that's going to be the difference in the fight. Lee's going to light him up, stand him. Bilder is one-dimensional with a jab. He's looking for that takedown. He's a weasel, in my opinion. I've mentioned this many times. I don't like these types of fighters. I don't like Joe Selecki. I don't like Bilder. Can't think of the other ones. Just these guys who just want the takedown. That's all they're looking for. Pumping out a jab, waiting for you to throw something so they can level change. Don't like it, man. It's MMA. I don't want to see someone with a body triangle on for fucking a round. So I hope he knocks Bilder out. But shout out to Glenn. The sub could be on. So be careful betting the KO for Lee, man. He's got a nasty armbar that he hits fast, man. And no, he's not the next Jenka. He is legit Lee. He is fast. I've been watching him on Instagram.
Hey, Jekka plus 400. People wanted to doubt it. And then he said, that to hell.
Fucking, where was I? Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, G.
Lee's going to finish him, man, in my opinion. But I didn't bet it, man. It is getting a bit mushy. I didn't like that. I was holding off because Lee has had a year and a half off. He's had knee surgery, still wearing the brace, not really training anywhere special. But it's Bilder, man, and I don't think Bilder's anything special. So I think Lee wins, but I don't know about a bet, man. It is a bit mushy.
Yeah, I did regret not betting Kyle Nelson last time, but plus 200, a lot different circumstantial situation. So I'm willing to pass here unless the line contracts a little bit. But yeah, I'm not sold on Blake Bilder at all. So not going to be a bet for me. Next up, my man, Themba Gorimbo, back in the UFC. I fucking love this guy. Taking on dead game Pete Rodriguez. Pete Rodriguez seems to be a popular underdog this week, Rich. How do you feel about those sentiments?
Fucking, of course I could be wrong, but I think everyone's an idiot if you bet Pete in this situation. Literally an idiot, man. I can't make a case for Pete winning this fight. Metrics aren't on his side at all. Themba's got the height and reach advantage. What else? Short notice for Pete. The regional's poor. He has to get into the pocket to throw his hands. He's shit from the outside, so the metrics are going to come into play. He's outclassed on the mat. Someone tried to negate that with me saying he's a black belt, but not all black belts are equal, man. And that black belt will turn to a white belt on short notice when you're coming in a little tubby fucker and you're not taking this serious, man. Just look at his body fat. He's not taking this game serious, I don't think, Pete. He's one-dimensional. It's set up by the UFC. Gorimbo's got that feel-good story from The Rock buying him a house. Personally, I would have given the house back. I don't like The Rock. Fuck him. But yeah, Gorimbo, I think sub round 1 is a good look. It was plus 275. I think that's the way you play this fight. I think literally, honestly, one takedown and it's a wrap. It's just too big, man. That size difference in the grappling will be too much. They'll be fresh, and I think he's going to catch him when they're dry and sink in the choke within 3 minutes, man. So I'm on it quite big, round 1 sub. I might hedge a tiny bit with KO round 1. But yeah, I think it's done within 3 minutes, man.
Oh, Rich, that's music to my ears. And I would encourage you to hedge with that KO because last time out against Takashi Sato, I believe Themba was sick. I don't think he was feeling well coming into that fight. But he had told me he was gunning for the KO. And if you remember that fight, he basically knocked Takashi Sato out. The referee is none the wiser. Then he hops on him. And then, of course, Sato goes into defense mode. We've seen Sato fend off chokes for 15 minutes from, what's his name? Gunnar Nelson. So, like, the guy is just pretty good at defending, the series from there because he spent half his UFC career being controlled from the back. But in any case, when you look, I just think to myself, like, Themba is a guy with a goal. And his goal is to knock somebody the fuck out in the UFC. So I'm like, Themba in this fight, I think, is probably going to throw a little bit. I do think it's his natural inclination is to take people down. I think he's going to take him to the ground. But this is one of those spots where I could definitely see, like, number one, Pete Rodriguez wore so much damage so fast against Jack Della because Jack was just having target practice. Like, tat, 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 tat. Like every straight shot that he threw down the middle is just going plaster, and his nose was just all over his face. He was busted up really bad. Obviously, JDM, very fast, prolific striker. But I think if Themba just keeps him at the end of a jab, throws a bunch of shots in his face, he's going to wear a bunch of damage quickly. And then he could be taking bad shots from far away. If Themba gets on top of him, I think he could just wrist control and punch him out. So give me Themba. I think Themba's going to win inside the distance. Go ahead.
Do you want to know why I don't think he'll punch him out? I think because the choke's going to be there. He hasn't got a UFC win, and he's just desperate. He has got the win. He's got the win over Sato, but he's desperate to get it rolling, man. I just think he's going to take the path of least resistance, and it's what you know, innit? People can say, "Oh, I'm going to test my stand-up in this fight." As soon as they get hit, you go to what you know. You go for the takedown. And one thing that I really find interesting on tape from Pete is, I really think you give me or you 6 months of boxing, we could beat him in a boxing fight, man. The guy is shit. Do you know when he was fighting Jack? I know he's outclassed. It was short notice, yeah. He comes into the pocket like Benavidez. Remember Benavidez when he fought Figgy? And he crashes into the pocket with his head when he throws his punches. Pete does exactly the same thing, man. He won't throw the technique properly. He like lunges in, so he's always coming forward. And that's a level change, man. He's literally giving you the level change. He's going to crash into the pocket like an idiot. And make it easy for Themba. So takedown, sub, easy.
Fair play, my man. I think Themba easy. That's my goal. But I'm just rooting for the guy. Even if he loses this fight, I'm a Themba fan again tomorrow. He's just a guy that I really like and I'm rooting for. But
do you know what's funny, bro?
This one done big. Yeah, go ahead.
I do think his ceiling is limited in the UFC. Gorimbo, yeah, he can win these fights against Pete's and whatnot, but it's like Sage Northcutt, Mickey Gall. They can win a few fights, but then when they get to a certain level, skills matter. So I can't wait for him to sell the house, man, and that to become a story and fuck off back to Africa. That's going to be funny.
See, I thought that Themba was going to beat AJ Fletcher, and I think he just got a little bit overexcited. That was when he was still not really training full-time in the U.S. either. So now I think he's just come a long way. And to your point, Rich, the ultimate decider for me is I have one guy who is all in on, like, I will win the UFC championship by any means necessary. And another guy who's like, am I a lightweight? I don't know. Like, can't really make up his mind. Not for me. That's not the kind of indecision I'm looking for. Themba ain't making lightweight unless somebody cuts off one of his legs, I think. So that for me is enough to pick Themba to win the fight. Next up, man, we've got a flyweight prelim between Charles Energy Johnson, the worst handicap fighter among the BetMMA.tips community, and Azat Maksum. This is a Kazakh undefeated fighter. This is an interesting flyweight matchup. I'll start off on this one, and I'll say that, Azat Maksum is a guy that I have to tape a little bit more, right? Like, I've taped a lot of fights on this card. This is one that I want to tape a little bit more, but I'm just never going to bet on Charles Johnson in the UFC. I wish him well in his life and his career, but like, just not the kind of guy I'm going to bet on. Too much time spent in negative positions, too much time spent being neutralized in his fights. A lot of the same fights have played out multiple times. His coach is often very frustrated with what he's doing, and he just doesn't seem like he's the most dangerous guy. With the exception of that Jimmy Flick fight, hasn't really shown a big killer instinct in the UFC. Let a couple guys off the hook when they were tired as well. So for me, I just think that Azat's going to run him on the mat here, just like a lot of other guys kind of have in the UFC. And that'll probably be the end of the Charles Johnson experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I did say after the last fight too, never betting Johnson again. And I'm not. But I still took a look at the matchup just in case. But yeah, he's talking in the past tense when he's doing his interviews now as well, saying you know, the whole time I was fighting in the UFC, my family couldn't even come to see me fight. So I don't like the fact he's talking in the past tense. It's the same shit, man, every fight. And maybe he wins this one and like, oh shit, I wish I'd have bet it, but I'm just not willing to take the risk, man. Round 2 or 3, when he's supposed to put it on people with the superior cardio and the good get-ups, he doesn't. Every fight just doesn't have the killer instinct. So no bet from me. And I'm not betting this Maksum guy as well because he's shit too. He's going to get found out. So I'm not risking it on somebody like him. So yeah, pass from me, man.
Yeah, that seems fair to me. I have no bets on this fight so far, man. And I'll probably keep it that way. You know, I think that a lot of times the way people get burnt is betting on Charles Johnson to get finished. And he's one of those guys who tries to be real stingy, right? And just like, you know, find a way to make it 15 minutes, even if you can't win the fight. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, if you're betting against somebody to get finished, you almost want them to, hey, sell out, try and look for something late, you know? Let's look at the next fight here where we've got Molly Meatball McCann taking on Diana Belbita. And this is a rematch, Rich. Why don't you start us off with this one? Fascinating fight in the strawweight division. That is the news and headline here is that Molly Meatball McCann moving down to 115 pounds. And she's taking on Diana Warrior Princess Belbita. Both of these women have contemplated retirement. What's the final verdict here, Rich?
Yeah, well, you said earlier you watch interviews and you don't know whether that's square or not. It's not. I watch the interviews, and this is why you should, man. Go watch Belbita's interview with MMA Junkie. Very alarming. She told us that she was in Canada 2 weeks ago for the Canada card as a fan with a fella. And then she got the call for this fight. So she's taking this on 2 weeks' notice, no training, unprepared. So yeah, I don't give her a shot in hell, to be honest. And I didn't, before I watched the interview, you know, they fought before. We saw how it played out. She hasn't improved in her time in the UFC, Belbita. That takedown defense is disgusting. Her striking isn't good. She doesn't have power. Her wins aren't great. You know, Hannah Goldie, I think, is one of her wins. Big whoop. I think Molly is taking it serious now. That's probably the smartest thing Belbita said all week. She said Molly was playing a superstar, and I think now she's taking it serious. And I think she's hit the nail on the head. I think Molly has got back in the gym. You know, no more, you know, the Molly and Paddy show. She's wind down a little bit. She's doing things right. And I think she's going to show out here, man. I think she's going to get a finish. I think that it was going to be a TKO ground and pound, but when they priced the sub at 900, I had to put a little something on that just in case. So we'll see, man. But I don't give Belbita a chance. I think she's going to get finished. She's going to retire. And yeah, good luck to her, man. Molly ITD was 310 plus 310 like an hour ago. Just insane, man. It should, in my opinion, it should be like plus 180, plus 160. So value there all day, man.
Yeah, we tend to see this one pretty similar. You know, when I look at this on paper, I say to myself, man, Molly Meatball McCann, what does she mean to the company? Clearly, they like marketing her, right? Brought her to some big events, used her to build some other stars, right? Erin Blanchfield isn't getting these main events and these huge opportunities unless she goes out there and squashes, you know, Molly McCann at the peak of her powers, right? At the end of her run. And when you look at Molly, you know, she's a girl that, you know, hasn't been match made soft throughout her career, right? Like, you go look, she's fought real girls. Talia Santos, she fought. Lara Procopio, black belt, she fought. Like, Lara Procopio, when she wasn't having problems, was a serious fighter, right? So, like, you just look at the strength of schedule. For a while, they were giving her tough matchups. They were giving her, you know, a real run in the UFC. And then they realized, like, hey, you know, we've got this thing we can market. She's with Patty the Batty, this, that, and the third. But now I'm looking at a situation where I'm like, Molly McCann contemplated retirement, right? Just like Diana Belbita. But the difference was that was the night of her fight. She said, maybe I'm not doing this anymore. And her coach said, listen, Molly, I'll never let you get embarrassed. I'll never send you out there if I don't think you're ready to get wins. He's like, but what I need from you is we need one try at 115 pounds. We got to take this really serious. We got to get the weight in check. Because the truth is, guys, Molly has always been tremendously undersized. She's not very big. right? She's pretty short, stout, doesn't have a long arm reach. So she's always fighting against type and just trying to get in somebody's face and whatever. And I think when she came into the UFC, you listen to how they announced her, she was a boxer. That's how they announced her. Nowadays, I think she fashions herself more of an MMA fighter. She wants to be more well-rounded. And I think that's why she was so devastated by that fight. She said, I've been spending so much time on my wrestling, on my grappling, and to get embarrassed like that, maybe this just isn't for me anymore. And her coach basically said, no, it's not. It's not that. It's the fact that this is a 135er. She cut down to 125. And, that was a tough sell for us. You go down to 115, you're the strong one. You're the powerful one. You're back in the driver's seat. You can go back to getting wins. And so this is a girl who was inspired by that fight behind me, right? Ronda Rousey and Liz Carmouche. That's what made her say, I'm going to get into this damn sport. And so Molly said in her interviews, the way I responded to that was that I got back on the mat and I went out there and got, exactly the kind of win that Molly would get, which is I went out there and armbarred somebody in the first round myself. And I was like, you know what? How wrong could you be at plus 900, Rich? Because I'll tell you something. The last time they fought, closed plus 650. So I think of Molly McCann as a girl who is going out there to prove a point. I think of her as a girl that is making a serious lifestyle commitment at 115 pounds. Guys, I said the exact same thing about Miesha Tate. People laughed, scoffed, whatever, and then she completely dominated the fight, right? And me and you said the same thing, Rich, which is like, what is she doing at her age, making these serious lifestyle commitments? It's like probably trying to win fights, like probably trying to actually compete and make money. So I think of Molly McCann as a girl. She could have just said, hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to coach. She's a coach, right? She could do all these other, but she said, no, I want to make one more run at this. I want to get one more real win. And if you guys needed a narrative nation, look at this. Her teammate is in hospital. Her teammate was paralyzed from the waist down from a training injury. And she said, I am going to win this fight and bring you the gloves. I think you are going to get a 100% effort performance from Molly McCann, win, lose, or draw. So take that for whatever it's worth. Let's move to the next one. Oh, no, please, Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, just to put a sour note at the end of it and to burst Molly's bubble. Let's be honest here, man. This is the easiest fight the UFC could have given her. Then problems still exist for Molly. It wasn't the weight with Erin. Yeah, that played a factor, but it was the gap, man. Erin's a fucking beast on the mat. It's uncomparable.
100%. 100%. I'm saying when you look at how she got handled by Stoliarenko, I think that the Stoliarenkos of the division, the girls that are fringe top 15 and stuff like that, she could 100% compete with at 115. But at 125, I do think it's a tougher sell. I think 125, frankly, is getting deeper, by the day as well. So a lot more contenders up there. And she fought a few of them on the way. So fair play to her. And the one other thing I'll mention is Molly has no subs, right? But she does attempt them. It's not like she's a girl that's never gone out there and tried, like Magomed Ankalaev or some of these guys that are just like, I refuse to submit people. But she goes for it, but she just doesn't always get it. I put out a tape study thread on Twitter that I think is worth checking out if you're curious about that fight, because frankly, it's a rematch, right? What could be more revelatory than the fight that they've already had? And I think that one thing that was apparent there was the physical disparity between the two. And I think that will be exacerbated here at 115 pounds, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
And Dixon, if Molly's been doing BJJ tournaments and losing, that means she's getting better, right? Like if she's going out there and just beating up bums all the time, that frankly wouldn't tell me much. But the fact that she's challenging herself at her age and cutting down in weight, she's trying to get better. And I think Diana Belbita is trying to get out of the game. So
Belbita's a double white belt as well, man. So say no more.
Fair play. That's the end of that. Next up, we got Gilbert Urbina taking on Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke. Oh boy, Rich. I don't know what to make of this one, man. I don't feel very bullish on either of these guys, tell you the truth. I mean, you're getting plus money tag on Chuck Buffalo. He's coming off a UFC win, but frankly, that wasn't a very great win, I didn't think. I thought Blood Diamond wasn't UFC level. I thought the win itself was pretty low quality. Cut a promo that was kind of embarrassing after. So if the UFC was trying to set him up to fail, I think they could have done better. They could have set him up with stiffer competition, but also Urbina is a guy that they know is going to go out there, put on a fun scrap. I think that's kind of what they're looking for here. They know Chuck Buffalo can kind of find those insane victories, come from behind, big knockout, swinging crazy, meme a submission, but he's also a guy that puts himself on the line. He can get chinned. He could get checked here. And Urbina, I think, has the body type where he could get something opportunistic in the grappling. I do think that Chuck is a better grappler overall, but I've always said like limb length is important when you're trying to just pursue opportunistic subs, and especially in a fight. It's a lot different than in a jiu-jitsu match where it's more about who's technical, who can pass, who can have the better cardio. In a fight, sometimes you're on wobbly legs, right? You get hit with a big shot. You're starting to be compromised. You get hit with a body shot. Then limb length becomes huge, right? It just allows you to latch something on a lot quicker. And I do think Urbina could potentially take advantage if he hurts him with a club and sub type opportunity. But I don't have very strong thoughts on this one, Rich. How do you feel?
It was one of the first fights I taped, man. And the most notable thing to me was the cardio of both guys. But the cardio depletion is very different from both of them, man. I think Radke has shit cardio regardless, but Urbina's cardio problems was a pacing issue. He was just going too ham, coming out the gates too fast. And I think he's rectified that a little bit. But yeah, going back to Radke, man, I think his cardio is disgusting. The Blood Diamond fight, I tried to make allowances. It was in Australia. It was his UFC debut, but he struggled to take him down, and he gassed himself out trying to take him down. So in rounds 2 or 3, he was cooked and just happy to hold him against the cage and get his W in his debut. But man, doing that against somebody like Urbina, who's kind of like similar styles, he's got the metrics on his side, better cardio in my opinion. And I don't think Radke's got the hands. I watched him regionally. I don't like his stand-up at all. So I think this is going to be it's going to be them rolling around on the floor. Radke is a black belt, but I think the fact that he's going to gas kind of just throws that out the window, man. So I think Urbina 2-3 is the way to go. Who the fuck's playing his money line at -180, -200? That's stupid in my opinion. So yeah, you take the props on Urbina, whatever you want. KO, ground and pound, submission, 2-3, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think Radke gasses, man. And it's going to be a finish.
Fair play. Yeah, I thought Radke just should have had a much easier dominant showing against Blood Diamond, and it just didn't really show me very much. So I'll probably pass on this fight overall. I just don't I feel like I have a lot of clearer reads on this card. This is not one of them. So I'll leave it to the professionals. Next up, we got Aliashkab Kizriev taking on Mahmoud Muradov. And I think this is one that you feel bullish about, Rich. So I'll let you lead this one off.
I actually don't. I know I put this out as mush of the week for Kizriev. Since the turn of the year, we had... who was the first one, man? I know Mike Malott was mush of the week. I can't remember who was the one before him. Ricky Simon, -170. He was the first. Anyway, it's Kizriev now, mush of the week. And the reasons are, I don't think this is the right weight class for him. I think he could drop a weight class. I think it's due to his age. He's 33 and just doesn't want to cut the weight anymore. He's had one fight in the last 3 or so years against Dennis Talulian. And his regionals are poor. And if you go and look at the other side on Muradov, I think he's got some anti-grappling in him, which he's going to need because, it's pretty evident from tape. Kizriev likes his takedowns, wrap up the legs, get a submission. He's surely going to try that. But I think the physicality of Muradov, the height discrepancy is going to play a part in defending them takedowns. And yeah, when it comes to the stand-up, I think it's one-way traffic, man. I think Muradov has the better hands, so the KO could be on. So yeah, mush of the week, Kizriev. And most importantly, which makes him mush of the week, all the squares are on Kizriev. They're parlaying him with Maksum and putting 3 units on him, 5 units on him. It just ain't going to work out, man. So Muradov's going to win, in my opinion. And I like him by decision. That's a stupid number 2 if people want to check that out, man. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Very interesting. So, man, I don't have a great read on this one either. I'll tell you, I've never been sold on Muradov. I tweeted after his last fight that he gave me some fraudulent vibes. But I can also make the case in my head for how he could win this fight, right? Like Kizriev's not a very proven commodity. I do think he's skilled. I think he's talented, but he's also a guy that just hasn't fought very much. I thought, speaking of guys who looked a little skinny fat, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like I thought my guy looked pretty skinny fat against Denis Dolidian, right? Like I thought he just had a layer of chubbiness that you don't normally see on professional athletes. That just calling it the way it is. So when I see that, I'm a little bit concerned. When he's pulling out of half of his fights in the UFC, let's be fair. Half of his fights, people pull out of, right? So it's not like every one of them is his fault, but like he's just not. He's suffering from a lack of activity, in part because of his own doing, in part because the other guys don't want to sign on the dotted line or they can't make it to the fight or whatever. So by hook or by crook, the guy's not in the octagon. When he is in there, he's looking okay against Denis Dolidian of all people. I mean, Denis Dolidian is like the free win on most people's bingo card in the UFC. So that's a little bit concerning as well, especially if you're a primary grappler. We do know that Dolidian's like a tough son of a bitch, right? He'll just take a bunch of shots. Like he's willing to get hit a bunch of times, but he's really not altogether very skilled. So I do think when I look at Kizriev, he's got some wrestling, some grappling. I think he could try and leverage that here, but am I sold 100% that he's going to be able to? That I don't know. The concern I have for Muradov, he's done well and even better than I expected, right? I thought Caio Barajo was going to get him out of there. Did a great job to make it to the finish there. Even competed much better than I expected with Caio, who's a seasoned grappler. I think he's even beaten Jailton Almeida in grappling matches on the Brazilian regional scene before. So like Caio gets down. But when you look, or he certainly competed with him. But in any case, you look at a guy like this and I say, man, Muradov, he attempted so many takedowns his last fight. He's working with Ankos MMA. He's getting better at wrestling. He's trying to. But his cardio was never the greatest selling point. He did find ways to take people out in the third round in the UFC, but he also slowed down pretty substantially against Gerald Meerschaert. I think that if you target him to the body, that's a great way to get after him. I'm not sure that Kizriev's going to do that. So it's a fight with a lot of intangibles for me. I definitely missed the best of it on Muradov. I was looking at the plus 160 and saying to myself, man, am I going to regret not taking this? And then I look back, it's like plus 145, plus 130, and continuing to drop. So I think people that got in a little bit earlier probably got the best of it. But I could just see this fight going either way. So I think early portion of the fight, the win equity, the finish equity, I'd give more of that to, Kizriev. I just think he's got a more dominant style. And I worry about the cardio of Muradov if he's getting taken down consistently. But if Kizriev shows up looking skinny fat on the scales, this line's going to continue to contract, in my humble opinion, because Muradov's big. He's also, I'll just say, and I mentioned this on my first look, if you guys haven't checked that out, he's the biggest social media account on this fight card, and it's not considerably close, right? Like 2.1 million. It's a huge social media following. A lot of people on this fight card couldn't buy that kind of social following. So I do think Muradov is a guy that the UFC would love for him to win fights and be good, with the backing of Floyd Mayweather, with a lot of promotional entities. So that's something I never look to ignore either. And oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wasn't going to mention the socials because I think the average bettor or whatever doesn't give a shit about them things. They're just like intangibles me and you use to make bets, I think. But yeah, another thing that's important, I haven't got my notes. I fucking threw them away like a dick when I was sorting my notepad out. So I'm going off memory. He's had fake fights, man. This Kizriev. Fight Nights Global put on fake fights all the time. Same as Brave FC, man. So he's been in some fugazi fights for sure, but against shit competition. So I think half of his fights, I don't even count, man. So yeah, fully mush of the week, man.
Heard that. I love that Natalia Silva's fighting on her birthday. I didn't even know that. That's fascinating. And I think she's going to unwrap herself a gift in this matchup. We've got Viviane Araújo taking on Natalia Silva. And this is the Battle of Brazil, right? This is where we find out who's coming and who's going in this division, Rich. And I'll lead this one off. This is a fight where I do have some thoughts. I do have some opinions. And I think that Natalia Silva is a talented girl, right? One of my most regrettable betting decisions is that I pump faked the money shot, right? She was plus 2XX against Jasmine Jasudavicius. And I said at the time, I was like, man, I like this Natalia Silva girl. I think she's got real upside. She's been fighting since she was young. I was like, but she can't, be trusted because she hasn't been in the cage, right? And she hadn't fought in like 2 years at the time. And she was just getting so much better, Rich. And she went out there and schooled Jasmine. And I was like, she'll never see plus 200 again. And we've seen, is Jasmine Jasudavicius a fool? Is she a bum? Is she some, incapable fighter? No, but she got owned in that fight, right? It was not very competitive. It was not very close. Most of the time, she didn't have much to offer. And that was Natalia Silva on a UFC debut. That was Natalia Silva before everybody had a chance to see what she's really capable of. And we've seen more elements of that in her UFC run. Is she still young? Is she still green? Could she still make some mistakes? I think that's fair to say. But when I look at this matchup on paper, I say to myself, man, you got one girl who's trending in the wrong direction. She's getting hurt more in her fights. She's looking more and more sloppy at times. And I think she had like the ultimate defining moment, like step up 5 rounds, Alexa Grasso, who's going to fight for the title? Who's going to take that next step? And she lost. And a lot of times, what happened to Beneil Dariush? He had that big step up. He had the big run, 7 fights in a row. Maybe it's a whole different story if he fights Arman when he's still on that 7-fight win streak. But, Rich, I don't think people talk about momentum enough in this sport. And you got one person that doesn't really have momentum and that's kind of struggling to find a place in the division, and another person who's shooting like a rocket towards the top of the division. And I think the UFC wants to put a rocket on her back. I think the UFC is like, please, Natalia Silva, get this old hag out of our division. And I say this with love and respect, right? But like, she's 37, right? They're like, get this old hag out of our top 10 rankings, and you get your pretty face in there, get smile, spin kicker in the head, whatever it takes. I think they want her to go in there and eliminate Viviane Araújo, make her a gatekeeper formally, send her to the back of the line. And this is no disrespect. We always stop Brazilian hate on this show, but this is the fight game. And if you guys are new here, welcome aboard. It's the young feeding on the old. And unfortunately, you've got a very young, primed, hungry Natalia Silva. Can she get humbled here? Can she get a vet lesson? It's possible. Do I see it happening? No, Rich, I do not. I think she's going to be giving the lesson in this fight. How do you feel about it?
I'm going to have to steal that one off you, man. She's an old hag, but all love and respect. Yeah, she's going to sub her, man. Silva is going to sub her. She's going to get tied in round 2 or 3. She's going to take Natalia down, and she's going to probably get armbarred from bottom. So that's what I like, man, and that's what I bet. I put a unit on it. The submission is plus 700. I think that, like you said, passing of the torch. She's old. Araújo, 37. She's a bit stiff in her striking. I think Natalia's a bit faster. She also throws up the kicks as well. I like that about her. Yeah, just passing of the torch. You kind of covered it all, man. The only thing I'd say is it's going to be a sub, or at least I think it is anyway. So yeah, what more can I add, man?
Yeah, I think that she's just dangerous everywhere, right? So could I see it being a sub? Absolutely. But I also could see it being a knockout. I could see it being a club and sub, right? She's spinning, head kicks her. Vivi goes for a shot takedown and just gets subbed on the way in. That's something I could see as well. But I just think when you have somebody who's young, dynamic, dangerous in all positions, what you expect from them is that they're going to improve every fight. And I think you've got one girl who's making these huge improvements and another girl who at her best would have been a really tough test, but I think she's just a shadow of that right now. Close approximation, but a shadow of that. And I think that is going to be all the difference that is necessary to see who's who and what's what. And I think Natalia Silva's coming and she's going. So that's the way it is. Next up, we've got Randy Rude Boy Brown taking on Muslim Salikov, the king of Kung Fu. Rich, what a matchup. Rebooked fight here. Hate rebooked fights, as you know. But I do think that I could potentially get to some bets on this fight after digging into it more. Muslim Salikov does look like the ghost of Christmas past. This week, he's looking a little bit worse for wear. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this matchup. Fascinating fight here in the welterweight division.
Yeah, Brain all day for me. I like him by knockout. Yeah, just too old. Muslim's too old, man. He's digressing in fights. The Dalby fight wasn't a good look. He kind of wanes after 4 or 5 minutes into the fight. I don't like that. Small cage, which is going to force the action. Metrics are on Brown's side. Younger, athletic, black. Got the jiu-jitsu. He's just going to smoke him, man. He's too old, Muslim, digressing too much, 39 years old. I've bet on 39-year-olds. I bet on a fucking 40-year-old Robbie Lawler, Nicholas Dalby. I bet on some oldies, but Muslim ain't the one, man. He's lost his speed. Yeah, he's got a bit of power. That's the last thing to go. But Brian keeps the range well, unless he's fucking getting knocked out by Nico Price from bottom or whatever. But I'll make allowances for that one and say Brian smokes him, man. And also, Brian's won a few by decision. Someone was telling me Brian's not a finisher. Yeah, that's exactly why he's going to finish now. Law of probability, innit? He's finished 5 by decision. Now we get a finish. So I love it. Plus 200 or plus 220, I think it was.
Yeah, man. I want to shout out Thomas here. Says close approximation to shadow. Great word selection. Thank you, my man. Try and get some vocabulary words in on the show and help everybody. And I appreciate the kind words and the support. But as far as what you're saying, Rich, I totally agree, right? Betting on regression is something that I look to do, right? We're not trying to, just say words for the sake of saying words, but it's like, it's a fight, right? And like, especially, we're not talking about flyweights. We're not talking about, the women's strawweight division or something like that, where maybe, do I need a big plus number? That we're talking about welterweights. We're talking about a welterweight who's 6 years younger with a massive reach and size advantage. Like that, do we need to say that much more? I mean, it's like those kind of betting opportunities don't always roll around. Is there some danger in it because it's a rebooked fight? Sure. But a couple things that stand out to me. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised at some of the, for example, 170-pound fights. I'm expecting them to end inside the distance at like at least a 50% clip, if not higher. You got a couple guys who are a little bit older. Both have been finished in kind of weird ways before. And it's even money for the fight to end inside the distance. I mean, seems a little bit weird to me. So yeah, couple things I'll look to target on this fight. I'm not going to spell out everything in plain letters and details, but I agree with you that the KO is very live here. And we'll mention the interviews here briefly. I would go listen to Randy Brown's interviews where he's very clear about what he'd like to do in this fight if he's able to. And I also thought he was very contemplative about his career. About where he's at. He's like, I want my legacy to be that I fought tough guys the whole way through. I was never afraid of a challenge and I continue to get better. And he said, I don't lose a lot of fights in a row. He's like, when I lose, I rattle off win streaks. I get back on my feet. And I think that's what he's going to do here. So Randy Brown, New York in the building, baby. Let's stand up for Randy Brown. It's Black History Month. Jamaica, stand up for your guy. All right. We're here. Randy Brown's in the building.
It's a Black History Month.
It's Black History Month here in America, Rich. Indeed. But we got Renato Moicano taking on Drew Dober in the co-main event of the evening. Let's get it rumbling. This is a fun one, man. When I look at this fight on paper, I say to myself, I could see this fight going a million different ways. You've got two X factors here, in my view. Number one, Renato Moicano, I think, is not setting the table for himself. What do I mean by that? He's doing the YouTube content. He's doing that kind of stuff. No problem with that. If you're doing that and saying like, I love the UFC is awesome. The UFC gives me all these opportunities. If you're Max Holloway, right? Daniel Cormier, whatever, then the UFC is all cool in the gang with whatever you want to do on social media, on YouTube. You start talking shit about the company, bro. They're listening. They pay attention. And I don't like it. If my fighter starts talking shit about the company the week of the fight, I'm like, oh, fuck no. I'm selling out. I'm out on this position. And that's the one thing here. Charles Johnson, you had said he's talking in the past tense. He's talking about, I used to be a UFC fighter or something. Renato Moicano is like, I hate that they make me fight in the Apex. I want to fight in front of the fans and do the thing and whatever. And I'm like, man, when you put him in there with Drew Dober, what is Drew's goal? I mean, he's going to try and walk forward. And he's going to try and hit you with a shot that kills you. That's his, from the day he started, finding power shots in the UFC till today, that's how he's approached it. He's like, oh, I can knock people out. I'm going to walk him down and his chin will give out before mine. I'm going to keep getting in his face and throwing. And I think that Renato Moicano is a guy that is susceptible to being chinned. I just think he's susceptible to making some mistakes on the feet, to getting into ego battles at times. And some guys kind of fall into his game. Calvin Kattar, I thought, kind of got caught going in straight lines back and forth, just wanting to box with him, and he picked him apart. So is Renato capable of doing that? Absolutely. But I also just think he's got these kind of small margins, like I would just not feel very comfortable if he gets hit with a big ripping combination to the head or the body in this fight. that he's going to sustain it. And if you remember, Rich, I had Bobby Green against Drew Dober. I think that was plus money ticket. And I felt good about it. I felt really good. I felt like a genius. I was like, man, Bobby is whooping his ass. And if you listen to their banter after the fight, Drew was like, man, you kicked my ass for 8 minutes, man. Like, he's basically just giving hats off to you. But Drew is just willing to take damage, to come forward and kill people. Like, that's always been his calling card. And I think the UFC relies on that. You know, like Terrence McKinney getting a little too big for his britches. Let's humble the young man, right? Let's put him in there with Drew. And Drew took the shellacking, but then he was able to come back and get that finish and let him know, you know, I'm still here. And Matt Favola, I mean, me and you both agreed. That's just a terrible matchup for him. I mean, Matt's fast, hits hard, you know, wants to be there, willing to brawl, and also way better on the ground. Like, where was he going to win that fight unless he caught him in the brawl? Just seemed like a tough fight. So now I'm just looking at this and saying, like, should Renato Moicano win this fight? I mean, yes, like on paper, yes, he should win the fight. But I just have a hard time making him a substantial favorite, knowing what I know about the ego, about the cardio, or excuse me, not about the cardio, about the chin, and about the comments about the UFC, and like maybe the fact that he's like setting the table for a career outside of fighting. So those are the minor red flags for me on the Moicano side. I think both these guys capable of finishing. So that's my overall summary of the fight. Do think it's a dogger pass money line situation, but props are live on both sides. How do you feel, Rich?
Yeah, I just looked at Moicano's line, man. That's pretty disgusting. Minus 180. I can't be betting that, man. But I do think he wins, man. I don't like the wins for Dober. I think they were favorable matchups. Ricky Glenn. Let me stop.
Ricky Glenn was super favorable.
Yeah. Even the ones prior to that, though, man, I thought they was pretty favorable. Obviously not Green. Green's obviously game, but Rafael Alves, I don't think he's all that. Terrence McKinney, Alexander Hernandez when he was in his fucking nutcase stage. So yeah, I don't rate it that well, man. Am I on mute or something? No.
No, I'm hearing you.
Yeah. So I don't rate it that well, man. I like the over in this one. It's almost evens. I think it's like minus 105 or something. I think that's good. And yeah, just to push back on what you were saying, I agree, man. When people disparage the company, it's not good. And as we've been chatting in the week about that, Dana doesn't forget, man, and neither does the UFC. But that was on like fight week, man, or wasn't it like a couple of days ago? Like, you know what I mean? There was no time to give him an unfavorable matchup for talking shit on us. So I can agree with that in the future. Bouts, you know, he's definitely got a marker against his name now. But I like him here, man. I think the takedowns are going to be there. Whether he gets his insta sub, I don't think so. That's why I like the over. But I do like Moicano 2-3 sub, man. I think he's going to get it. I like Dober, friendly guy, fan favorite, and the rest of it. But I like Moicano, man.
By far the best win since 2020 for Renato Moicano. Chase the Dream Hooper. Y'all must have forgotten. It was a grappling match.
Yeah, I can't disparage one person's record and not look at the others. Let's have a look. Brad Riddell, that was when Riddell was not even in the game. Alex Hernandez, shit. Jai Herbert, shit. Damir. Oh, Damir, he's fighting next week. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Then Cub Swanson, he's apparently a black belt, but in reality, he's a white belt. Yeah, I see what you're saying. He's had favorable matchups too, man. I'm probably going to stay away. The numbers aren't great. I've got plenty of bets on the rest of the fights.
It's ironic, Rich, because at 145, he fought like a brutal strength of schedule. And at 155, he did fight some tough guys too. But like those were the ones that he lost. He has rattled off a bunch of wins, but that's always my concern with Moicano. It's just like the level. But even back in the day, he whooped Bonfim's ass. You know, that was something that gave me the indication Benoit Saint-Denis was going to have success. So, and speaking of which, we had to have this segment before we move on to the main event because people were getting at me on Twitter saying, what happened? What is your opinion here? Did Dustin Poirier duck? Is this a contract dispute? You know, I feel like he bailed you out of a potential Shui offering.
Okay. Yeah, you know what my thoughts are on that. Nah, I think everyone on Twitter needs to shut the fuck up, man. Like, my timeline is just full. Poirier this, UFC making contracts, Ariel chiming in to have a go at Dana about announcing fights. Who cares, man? The fight fell through. Let's move on. So what? They're not fighting anymore. Who cares about the circumstances, man? Move on.
I feel you. I'll give my quick summary thoughts on this, which is I believe that Dustin did not agree to the fight. I said in November, I thought Dustin would never agree to the fight. And I think I was vindicated in that. He probably would have agreed to it if they were like, yeah, we'll give you $5 million more or like, but he just was going to price himself out. That's what you do in a negotiation when you don't want to do something that's hard work. And meanwhile, for the UFC, they've got cards subject to change in big, bold fucking letters every time. So they sell you the ticket at a markup. And then afterwards, if they have completely fucked you, they might send you back some of your money like they did at MSG when they're like, hey, I know we said it was John Jones, not John Jones. We'll give you back half your money.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. They take the money up first and then they ask for the apology and maybe give you a small piece back.
Smart business. They do this all the time. Like you said, John Jones, MSG, let's sell the card out, make him the headliner. Everyone wants to watch John. Oh, he's got an injury, but you can't have you can't get a refund or whatever. It's always been done, man. And I just don't see why people are speculating to something that you'll never know the answer. Oh, Poirier ducked, or I know it's only banter, or even you, oh, he was going to win that fight. We don't fucking know, man. So who cares?
Oh, 100%. We have no idea who was going to win. I just wanted it to happen, and I never thought it was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised when he accepted it, and I'm not surprised that it's canceled. So that's the way it goes sometimes in the fight game. You do the work early because sometimes they come to fruition, but also if you're not willing to get your heart broken in this, you pick something else to do because fucking fights get canceled the week of the fight, the day of the fight, so you just got to roll with the punches. But I hope and pray, and I believe that Benoit Saint-Denis is remaining on the card. I think that's where the ducking allegations come from, is that Poirier is probably going to be rebooked for later on in the year against a different opponent, potentially even UFC 300. And I thought, Rich, that it made no sense that he wasn't on UFC 300. So it does make more sense to put Poirier on there. But then the question is, where does he fit on the card except in potentially a main event role? And I think that would be a disaster. So that's just a personal opinion, but like for me, Conor and Dustin 4 is a huge mistake for UFC 300. I think that's a pretty tired matchup. Like I think you just need to let that breathe a little and have some fresh matchups before they come back together. I think the Nate Diaz trilogy makes infinitely more sense, for example, but that's just a personal aside. We can now move along to the main event after you give your thoughts.
So I was just going to say, I think the headliner for UFC 300 is obviously either Izzy and Duplessis or it's Conor and Nate. I put a tweet out saying it's going to be Conor versus Chandler. Then they're going to screw Chandler and tell him to take a walk and bring in Nate on late notice because that's the only way Conor can beat Nate.
How about this? They'll be like, yo, Chandler, we'll give you the Poirier rematch. Because that's the best we can do for you right now. And then, then I'll hammer the ends by sub again and just hope that I can get my units back.
That's
5 units on Michael
bro.
Chandler.
I like that.
Freaking bump. Yeah, but that would be cool. And honestly, good UFC 300 fight. Who's gonna say no to that? Put that as a prelim headliner, so that way Holly Holm and Kayla take one more step down the card. That's what I would like. Perfect. Well, let's do it, Rich. We got the main event. Roman Dolidze, the Caucasian, taking on Nassourdine, the Russian sniper Imavov. And this is a fascinating fight. The more I dig into this fight, the more intriguing it is. When I look at Roman Dolidze, I just see a destroyer. I see a very dangerous guy. I see like top 5 guys I don't want to fight in the UFC, like top guys you don't want to run into in a dark alley, because most of the time I'm like, man, at least I can compete in the grappling. At least I have some, this guy just rip your leg off, change the way you walk real quick. And the other thing that's scary about him is just the fact that after he lets you off the hook for that, Phil Hawes fight comes to mind. The way he just stalked him with punches and just kept throwing until Phil was literally a dead body. And then he knew he was out and just like turned and walked away. He's a man. He's a scary guy to fight. You know what I'm saying? Like in that sense of the word, like what did he do that was super technical against Marvin Vettori? Nothing. He didn't throw any of the kicks I wanted. He didn't shoot any of the takedowns I wanted. And he still almost won the fight as a massive underdog just by walking forward and spamming hooks and being powerful and not caring about the offense that was coming back. And so in this fight, I don't think Imavov shown himself to be like this one-shot hitter quitter. Oh my God, the insane knockout power. I thought he was going to knock out Sean Strickland because Sean doesn't have that great a defense. I know that he's heralded for his defense, but his defense comes and goes like the wind, right? Against Pereira, he's literally just holding his chin straight up in the air, but then he's gotten a lot better in his more recent fights because of that loss and because of working with Pereira, hiding the chin, being more disciplined. We saw that in the Imavov fight. Didn't let much offense through, and he was able to get takedowns. He was able to outwork him, outpace him easily. Did the same thing to his next opponent. So the UFC kind of found a couple guys with bad cardio to get Sean Strickland on track. When you look at this guy, Roman Dolidze, I don't know exactly how much the UFC wants to promote this guy, doesn't want to promote him. Same thing with Imavov. I think they're almost indifferent to the promotional side of this. Both guys have a similar social following. Neither one of them's lighting the world on fire. Imavov is young. And so for me, that is a two-edged sword, right? A lot of people will say he's young, so he's got to win. He's young, so he's going to win. And guys, I do like betting into age gaps, right? Part of the reason I was going to bet Benoit Saint-Denis against Poirier, younger man, can take more shots, I felt, had less, ring wear, right? Just he hadn't had 26 UFC fights to get beat up already. So when you think about, these fights, you have to think about experience in more than one way. And I do think about this as neither one of these guys has a huge experience gap, right? But what Roman Dolidze brings to the table is a lot of competitive grappling experience. So he's been in the trenches, going out there, grappling, scrapping with really hard guys. But when it comes to the fights, he's had about the same amount as his opponent here in Imavov. But he's more, he's as good as he's going to be, right? Like Roman Dolidze is not going to get that much better. He kind of just is what he is right now. Whereas Imavov, I believe he just changed gyms, which sometimes that could be a blessing. Sometimes that could be a curse, right? You change gyms. Sometimes you don't get the same performance you want out of yourself the first time, especially. And that's something, shout out to my guy, Dan Tom. He's a guy that's done great work in the community for a long time. Analysis, like actual MMA analysis, one of the best in this space. So Dan Tom, MMA, go check him out. One of my colleagues at the Action Network as well. But when you're looking at a guy like Imavov, he could suffer from that fact that he's changing training camps. When you start changing things before a big fight, could be a problem. 5-rounder. This guy didn't have great cardio last time. How's it going to be with a new training camp? Maybe it's better. Maybe it's worse, right?
Where's he at?
I have no idea. It's somewhere in France with a French name that I don't understand. MMA Factory Paris, I can easily repeat to my audience. The one that I read, I was like, okay, he's at a new gym, but I'm just playing. When I looked at it, I was saying to myself, man, that could be a blessing or a curse, right? I've never thought super high of Fernand Lopez, but he does have connections. He does get guys to the UFC, these kind of things. Yeah. Dagestani, Russian, the Russian sniper, he sounds, I think, at times a little bit better than he is. Because the one thing I noted is that he is good. He does have some physical skills and some intangibles, but he also relies a lot on his top game. He has a lot of time in the UFC where he's taking guys down, gotten on top of them, beaten them up, passed the guard, gone for chokes, whatever it is. That's been his bread and butter. He's taking people to the ground and beating them up. You really want to go to the ground with Roman Dolidze? I mean, how many black belts are going to go to the ground? How many college wrestlers are going to go to the ground, get inverted, legs twisted all into a knot? I do think that he's a really hard guy to deal with. He's a hard guy to bail yourself out. Not many safe positions. And the last thing I'll leave you with here as I kick it over to you, Rich, is I think that Roman Dolidze is being slept on in his ability to win a decision in this fight. I think both men are capable of winning the decision. I think that if I'm a Imavov's coach, I'm saying jab, low kick, and stay the hell away from him. Because if you do that, you're easily going to win. And I think conversely, if I'm Dolidze's coach, I'm like, get close to him, push him against the fence, beat him up in the clinch. Dolidze is a machine from the clinch. He throws big knees that break people's face. Ask Kyle Dawkins. My man got hit with a knee and just went, oh, my face is broken. I have to get out of here. That's a scary guy. He's big, tall, long, leverage. And he need another guy, Khadisi Bragimov. I think the only time he got finished in the UFC via strikes was that time he got kneed in the head. And it looked like a kick. But if you watch the slow-mo, it's literally just he brings the high kick up and the knee hits him flush in the temple. Khadisi Bragimov is on all fours looking around like he is doing a yoga pose. So I do think Roman Dolidze's power has been a little slept on at times, but his most dangerous attribute by far is that submission skill set. So I think unless he gasses out horribly in this fight, he's going to look like the side at plus money. But if I'm Imavov's coach, I'm saying stick and move from the outside and don't get into any grappling exchanges, and we win this fight. And I think that's also the case.
Yeah, you pretty much covered it, man. I like that. especially what both men should do. Imavov should hit and run and point fight for the decision, in my opinion. And Roman should look to cage press him and hold him there like Hawes did. I think that's a big problem for Imavov, getting held against the cage. And it's the small cage. I really think he's got low IQ, man. And not just in fighting. I think he's just got low IQ. I don't want to use the R word, but I think he's got super low IQ, man. He doesn't change things up in fights. When he was getting beaten by Sean, come round 4, he was just happy to go into autopilot, and play a sparring match with Sean. Is that a smart thing to do? Nope. Against Hawes was holding him against the fence. No answer, man. And like you said, what's Roman? He's a brute force, man. A man. He's going to hold you against the cage. He's going to fucking throw his knees. And that fucking submission game, man, is just beautiful to watch. Never settles. You ain't fucking, winding down the clock by holding him down, wasting time, man. He's going to look for your legs, arm bars, all kinds of crazy shit. So I like Roman in this one, and I'm pretty confident I know how he gets it done. It's going to be a guillotine on a takedown. I think Imavov at some point is going to show that, I'll say it, that retard IQ. He's going to take him down, and he's going to get guillotined, man, specifically. So that's what I've bet, man. And love some Roman, man.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. My favorite tape study that I did this week was the Roman Dolidze tape study. There's a lot of things that you watch and you say, man, I think I could do that. Maybe with the right training, I think I could pull that off. I don't think I could do that shit. He's doing a lot of stuff with the inversions, with the traps that I simply can't do. The flexibility, the intricacy of his movements on the ground is sensational. And
the transitions, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also has what I think is like one of the most productive series. I always talk about good jiu-jitsu is step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's over. And it's just like, it's replicable. You just get somebody in this chain of events that they can't get back out of. And Roman Dolidze's hip swivel armbar series is just devastating. Like, guys just don't know what to do because you have to address it. Right? If you don't address it, he breaks your arm. Okay. So that's a bad outcome. I'm going to have to pull my arm out. So as I pull my arm out, he sends you into this chain of events where he has like 3-4 options on a decision tree. He's like, okay, if you go back into my guard, I'm going to elbow you in your head. I'm going to punch you in your head until you let me hip swivel to an armbar again. When I get to the armbar series, I'm either going to underhook the leg and hip bump back into the mount, which he almost did to Jack Hermanson when they were both completely fresh as a daisy. He had him like 3/4 of the way swept to the full mount. And then Jack panicked, sat back up, and he just floated through the air back to his feet. It was unbelievable. Then you look at the fact that he does not defend takedowns. It is it costs a lot of energy to try and defend takedowns in the UFC, which is why a lot of guys go out there and get tired as people press the cardio and the grappling on them. He wants to grapple. He doesn't resist you at all. To your point, Rich, he sits to the guillotine. If he doesn't get it, he pulls to the full guard. As soon as he does it, he hip swivels. And then from there, if it's not that initial series, we've seen him invert to the legs. We've seen him invert to a inverse triangle, almost got the inverted triangle on Jack Hermanson. He goes to an omoplata series from there. What do you do with this guy? He's just going to put you through a lot of paces and test where your grappling is really at. I feel like we've seen Imavov use his athleticism, his speed, his physicality, and the fact that he's been fighting guys that are afraid of him. And so he's pushing he's pushing Curtis back on the feet. He's pushing Buckley back on the feet and then forcing them to come forward in a reactive fashion, getting those easy double leg takedowns. Dolidze will not resist. He's like, all right, you want to take me down? Please do. And I just think that that's going to be a rude awakening because so many of these guys, Rich, they get taken down and their defense on the mat is horrendous. We're seeing Imavov pass in comical ways. That's just not going to fly in this fight. So yeah, unless I saw a line that somebody had posted on Twitter. It was -135, the submission only line. That was it. It's who wins by submission? Dolidze -135 or Imavov +110. And unless, he loses a limb or he's completely exhausted, that should be -230 at minimum, in my humble opinion. I think he's a much superior grappler. How about you?
I completely agree, man. And it's just nice to see it's just crazy, like jiu-jitsu guys, the different styles that they bring, like a Damian Myers all about like pressure and like the top game. And then you got someone like him who's just a little fucking squirrel on the ground squirming for stuff. It's just fun to watch, man. So yeah, I love it. And I hope he gets his win, man.
Hell yeah. And that's why I love him, because I can't do any of that shit. I'm just trying to choke you with a guillotine. So the guillotine we agree on, but everything after that, I'm like, all right, yeah, fuck, I'll leave that to the professionals. But there you have it, guys. We've done 13 fights. I think we've given you a ton of great looks. We didn't give you everything, but we gave you a lot. We're both profitable, third-party tracked, and there's a lot of profitable information in the description down below. I hope that you guys will check that out. Now let's turn it over to our guest. Rich, please let the people know where they can find the great work that you're doing and anything that you've got going on this week.
Yeah, so I'd say for this card, man, the safe bets are Brian, Molly, and Silver. I think they're going to roll, man. They're the ones being highlighted by the UFC on this card. But yeah, check me out on Twitter. Link to my Patreon. It's $12 in the bio. I got a Discord group. We have a live fight night chat and make some live bets on the night too. And like Liam said, I'm third party tracked. So if you want that, go and check it out, man.
Hell yeah. And guys, likewise, I put together resources each and every week for the UFC. I think me and Rich both do a hell of a job. We come up with independent ideas, but when you're trying to come up with sharp information, sometimes you're going to come on the same side of things, and other times we're going to disagree. That's the way that this cookie crumbles, right? There's going to be a lot of fights where sharp opinion on both sides. But in this case, I hope that we've put you in a position to succeed, whether you guys agree with us, disagree with us. I hope that we've given you some valuable information. Go ahead and support the two of us on Twitter at LiamPicksFights, at JustWinBaby. That's 2 T's in just. So make sure that you go ahead and support us there. If you guys are looking for this show on podcast, I'm going to make sure that this is available for you guys on podcast platforms by today. What I do have is a main event preview, my first look already up on podcast platforms at your leisure, at your convenience. Have the timestamps available as well for my first look. I'm going to do that as soon as possible for today's stream. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead and drop those in the comments section down below. But without further ado, guys, that's all we have for today. I want to just announce we're going to be streaming on this channel every day in February. So stay tuned by hook or by crook, one topic or another, whether it's breaking down a fight early, whether it's coming on and talking about some gambling theory. Every day in February, we'll be live on this channel. And that's including the normal stuff, bets and banter, first look. But it's also going to be a lot more additional content. So never been a better time to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you've enjoyed the content, and come back next time because we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody. God bless and good luck.